Today's Bible reading is taken from the Gospel of John, chapter 8, and we're beginning at the first verse. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." This is the word of the Lord.
I wonder how many of us can remember our first day at school and how we were feeling before we started. Or maybe perhaps we remember our child's first day at school, that sense of anticipation and excitement, but also anxiety. Will we make friends? Will we know where to go? What will the teachers be like? What will it feel like to hand over my precious child in the care of someone else for the whole day? Or perhaps, whoopee, I can hand over my precious child and someone else will look after them all day. A mix of emotions. This is perhaps the case, I'm sure, with the parents of Ruby. There's Ruby Bridges, 6-year-old, preparing for school. All those things no doubt went through their minds and Ruby's mind too. But sadly, they had other important things on their mind as well. When Ruby began primary school, on the 14th of November 1960, at the William Frantz Elementary School in Louisiana, she had to be escorted there by 4 federal marshals, past a crowd of 150 people shouting death threats and racist abuse. Despite legislation passed in 1956, the year of Ruby's birth, to make racially segregated schools illegal in Louisiana, the state legislature had found numerous ways to fight the court order. But now all the stalling tactics have been exhausted and the legislature had to relent, and schools in the state were to be integrated. When Ruby entered the school, she found it virtually empty. All the white families had withdrawn their children, some out of opposition to racial integration, others because they were fearful of the danger to their children from the angry mob outside. In that reading we heard from John's Gospel, Jesus too faces an angry mob baying for a young woman's blood. We know from chapter 7 of John's Gospel that Jesus is in Jerusalem during the Feast of the Tabernacles. This was a 7-day festival celebrating the provision of God's guidance for his people, the Israelites in the wilderness, as well as rejoicing in the gathering of the harvest. And there was a special ceremony which involved the lighting of a golden candelabra, recalling the pillar of light which led the Israelites on their journey through the wilderness in Exodus. And during the festival, people gave thanks for the rainfall which nourished the harvest, but they also looked forward to the coming day when God's Spirit was to be poured out on his kingdom. Jesus is teaching in a situation in the temple courts where he's surrounded by a large group of listeners. And at that point, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They make a stand before the group and they say to Jesus, "This woman has been caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses, we are commanded to stone such women." Commentators think that this reference to the law of Moses, suggested she was liable to be stoned to death because she'd been unfaithful during the period of betrothal. We remember, don't we, that Joseph seeks to quietly divorce Mary before it's discovered that she has done that in order to spare her from the terrible fate that's now being suggested for this woman. These angry, self-righteous men are demanding satisfaction. And as Christians remind us, of course, the man that was responsible for this, along with her, is now nowhere to be seen. And the reality is that the motives of these angry men are not religious really at all. They're wanting to force Jesus to uphold the Jewish law, because in doing so he'll be declaring that the woman should be stoned to death. And only the Romans had the right to inflict capital punishment. So if Jesus is arrested by the Romans, his threat to their power and authority would be conveniently disposed of. But Jesus knows their motives, and he knows them. And his reply reflects both compassion for the woman and conviction of their hypocrisy. Let any one of you who is without sin throw the first stone at her. Now, the irony, of course, is that Jesus alone fulfills that criteria of being without sin. But what follows, as the crowd slink away one by one, what follows is one of the tenderest exchanges in the Gospels. "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No, sir." "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." Jesus offers both compassion and the challenge to change, modelling the virtues that his followers are to emulate as sinful, broken people dealing with other sinful, broken people. And when Jesus spoke to the people again, he declared, "I am the light of the world." Now remember, he's at the Feast of the Tabernacles, and this would have had a special resonance to his hearers who'd witnessed this a symbolic lighting up of the golden candelabra illuminating the temple. Jesus is now declaring that he is light to the world, not only to the Jews, but to everyone else too. He's come not just to illuminate Jewish sacred spaces, not only to lead the Israelites out through the wilderness, but to light up the whole world, a beacon to to follow for all those who seek to know God in all his fullness. And Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Not a light amongst many, he is the light. Just as sun, S-U-N here, not S-O-N, gives life and clarity to the physical world, Jesus gives life and clarity spiritually. Without him we stumble around in moral darkness, in spiritual confusion, in brokenness. This is a glorious vision, but it's an uncomfortable one in many ways too, which is why these words of Jesus are so pertinent following the incident with the woman caught in adultery. Because in challenging the self-righteousness of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, Jesus shines a light into their inner darkness, exposing their motives and their hypocrisy, and causing them to slink away in embarrassment. In his dealings with the woman, Jesus' light brings the warmth of compassion and lights a way ahead in his challenge to her to go and sin no more. Jesus, the light of the world, illuminating dark places, bringing comfort and challenge. At William Frantz Elementary School in Louisiana, when Ruby entered the building, only one teacher remained in the school. Barbara Henry, the only teacher who was willing to teach her. And at considerable risk, Barbara taught Ruby on her own, one-to-one, for the whole of her first year at school. It cost Barbara her career at the school. She was dismissed the following year. But Ruby didn't remain the only child in the school for long, because that day, 5-year-old Pam Lloyd Foreman, a white girl, asked her dad if he would take her to school. And so the next day, Lloyd Anderson Foreman, a Methodist minister, walked his 5-year-old daughter, Pam, without federal protection, right through the angry mob and into school. When he was challenged, he said, I simply want the privilege of taking my daughter to school. And he continued to do this every day. Pam later recalled that her father had called it the longest walk. The uniqueness of the light of the world statement Jesus makes is that not only Jesus claims the title for his own, but incredibly he claims it for his followers too. Matthew chapter 5, beginning at verse 14, Jesus says, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. I find here the example of the moon quite a good illustration. You will know that the moon has no light of its own, but when we see it in the night sky, it shines brilliantly. And it does that because it reflects the light of the sun. And I think we are like the moon. We don't generate the light, we reflect the light of Christ. We become light because we have received his light. And Jesus says in John 8:12, whoever follows me will have the light of life. His light becomes ours, and it shines through us into a dark world. And light, well, we know what light affects its environment, doesn't it? It affects it by being different and distinctive, by being courageous in the midst of cowardness, by being truthful in the midst of lies. 50 years later, in 2010, Ruby and Pam reunited at the school, and Pam recalled that her and her family faced great adversity when she returned to school, defying the boycott. They had bomb threats. They had to move out of their house. But she said it was because of his faith in God and his belief that every child, regardless of their race, deserved the right to an education, that her father stood his ground in the face of all intimidation. As Jesus did when asked to pass judgment on the woman caught in adultery, Ruby, her teacher Barbara, her friend Pam and Pam's father all brought light to a dark situation. And as followers of Jesus, this is our calling too. Not to stay silent in the face of loud, angry voices, but to speak Jesus. Not to remain indifferent in the face of injustice, but to live and demonstrate Jesus. To always be working and praying together that we might better demonstrate the light of Jesus more clearly to others in our words, our actions, in how we live. And to always be working and praying together that those who do not yet know Jesus meet him in us. To offer comfort and challenge as Jesus did, even as we are comforted and challenged by him too. And in doing this, we have to be honest and say that light sometimes has to illuminate dark places where we might not expect to find them. In many ways, I'd rather we didn't look at the angry faces of the protesters who hounded Ruby Bridges in an act of worship. But I think we have to, because we have to be honest and recognise that many of them would have been there in an act of worship in church on Sunday. Like the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they wrapped up their vicious anger in self-righteousness and political zeal, masquerading as religious justification. Somehow believing that in seeking to intimidate and terrify a 6-year-old child because of the colour of her skin, they were doing God's will by hoping to stop what they regarded as the sin of racial integration. In reality, they were resisting racial equality in education because they saw it as a threat to their power and position in the community. And yet, through that mob day after day, walked first Ruby and then Pam and her father. And of course, in doing so, they just made the mob more angry, because in showing compassion for those previously denied education at the school, they were also convicting the crowd of their hypocrisy. And deep down, I suspect many of the protesters knew that. And so they made sure that Ruby's family suffered. Her father lost his job. There were stores they wouldn't sell to her mother. Her grandparents were evicted from the farm where they lived. But the thing about light is that it doesn't argue with darkness, it just shines. And the same is true spiritually. We may feel like our light is small and our faith is weak and our impact is minor. But we remember that the smallest light can be powerful in the darkest place. We heard an old Sunday school hymn at the beginning of our service, and some of us may remember another one. Jesus bids us shine with a pure, clear light. Remember that one? That's right, yeah. You in your small corner and I in mine, yes. And it may often seem like that in a hostile world, that we're alone in a small corner, but you know what, we're not. Because all around the world, the light of Christ shines through his people. We are not the source of it, but we are the reflection of it. And although that reflection seems dim at times, it is powerful. On her third day at school, Ruby remembers her mother saying to her, "The marshals will take good care of you, Ruby Nell. And remember, if you are afraid, say your prayers. You can pray to God anytime, anywhere. he will always hear you. Ruby never missed a day's school for a whole year. One of the escorts who took her in, Deputy Marshal Charles Burks, later recalled, she showed a lot of courage. She never cried, she didn't whimper, she marched along like a little soldier, and we are all very proud of her. Neighbours, both black and white, rallied round to help her family and to ensure their safety. And when the light of Christ is passed on, nothing on earth can stop it. After a few days, a handful of other parents followed Lloyd and Pam Foreman's lead, and children began to return to school. Defeated, the protesters began to fade away, although it took months, and it was a long time before Ruby was allowed to play outside with other children at break times for her own safety. What happened when she eventually did was captured by a teacher on a short cine film, which was rediscovered a few years ago. And here it is. The courage of one 6-year-old girl, aided by one teacher and one 5-year-old and her father, changed the course of history. Thanks to them, schools in Louisiana were fully segregated, and children like Ruby were no longer held back by poor quality education. Ruby graduated from a desegregated high school, became a travel agent, married and had 4 sons. She later wrote about her experiences in 2 books and received the Carter G. Woodward Book Award. A lifelong activist for racial equality, in 1999 she established the Ruby Bridges Foundation to promote tolerance and create change through education. In 2000 she was made an honorary Deputy Marshal in a ceremony in Washington, D.C. She remained in touch with both Pam and Barbara, who is now 92 years old. When we are overwhelmed, as we might well be right now, by the extent of the darkness in our world, we remember that we follow Jesus, the light of the world. And we are called, through living faithfully, to be that light too, reflecting his light, bearing witness to his love in ways that offer comfort and challenge, even as we are comforted and challenged by him too. The prologue of John's Gospel reminds us the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And Ruby Bridges reminds us a little light can go a long way. Amen.